Hey.
Hey! It's so fun to talk to real people.
Yeah.
So I should start. Her Bags Are Packed is a women's solo travel site, but kind of with a spin. So we don't just focus on solo travel, we also focus on helping women to release emotional baggage and the many ways that solo travel can help, but not just that solo travel helps. Um, so that's what it's all about. We have resources on mental wellness, and we also have resources on solo travel and kind of where they come together, guest posts that are sort of narratives and all sorts of the in between. Um, and I'm also really focused on trying to turn it into this community. And so we have, like, just this week, we launched two really exciting groups that just kind of were born out of random ideas I had. It was born out of the co-working groups that everyone's doing right now, like the online co-working.
Yeah.
And so one is Wanderlust Wednesdays, and it's just a time to get together with other either travelers or people who are interested in traveling. And we just, this was the first week, and I had one idea for what it was going to be, and it turned into something different. We did a travel journaling prompt, and then we just had this really fun conversation about like places we want to go, places we've been, and one of the women at the end, she was like, I haven't had any conversations like this since the last time I was in a hostel, which was over a year ago. And
Wow.
everyone's like, we didn't realize how deeply we needed that, to just like those moments that you get when you're with other travelers.
Yeah.
And it was really something special. And I was really moved by it because it was just this spontaneous idea I had. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. And then today, just this afternoon, we launched, it's called Unpacking Me Time. And the idea behind that being it's turned into a self-care accountability group. So we always say we need to do things for ourselves, but we put it at the bottom of the list, especially women. There's a lot of women in the community who are moms, and they're like, well, some reason I think going to the grocery store for 30 minutes alone is considered me time. Like that shouldn't be me time, you know? And so our goal is to just hop on, and we do like a little inspirational opening, and then we all just kind of mute our cameras or turn the cameras off and mute the mics for 30 minutes. And we go do whatever the thing is for you. And you have to come back at the end of the time and say whether or not you actually did the thing for yourself. And it's really fun because you're getting to encourage each other, you know, like hold each other accountable. Like you give yourself permission to do something for yourself because you're helping someone else at the same time. And that was also really fun and exciting. So that we did that today, and that'll continue. So that's the community we're building, and it's just really cool to see where it's headed.
Title of it is perfect as far as, you know, as far as I can tell. It just seems like it captures everything that I see you doing on a regular basis, you know, with especially on Instagram. And then recently you were interviewed for a piece in the New York Times. And it seems like, you know, it seems like you're getting a lot of like really, really good, you know, attention.
You're the one that told me it was published.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in reading the time, right? I think this is you. This is Catherine.
You
Message you,
like,
and I said, "Is this you?" And you're like, "Ah."
That was so sweet though, because you sent me this message or something like I think this is our Catherine or something, and I'm like, oh, I love that. Like I'm somebody's Catherine. Yeah, that was fun. It's kind of a little bizarre, but you have to. I started Her Bags Are Packed in November 2017, and if you rewind to 2007, I was in college, and I one day was kind of dealing with a lot of past baggage impacting a current situation. I was filtering everything through the past baggage, and it was destroying relationships with people, and I was seeing myself act out of that wounded place. And I was journaling, and I kind of asked this question, like, is this ever going to stop? Is this ever going to stop? My past ever going to stop destroying the good things in my present life? And this phrase came to me, whether it's, whether it was God, the universe, I don't know, whatever, like this, I really felt like in that moment, I was like, God just made me this promise that like the phrase was her bags were packed. And I felt like it was this promise that yes, you will get through this. Yes, you will let this stuff go. And I felt like at the time that that was going to be the title of a book I would write one day, talking about how I figured out how to get through this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was what I felt like. It was the title. And I just kind of tucked that away and told maybe 2 or 3 people and went on with my life. And I started traveling a lot, mostly solo in my 20s. It wasn't intentional to travel solo. I think it was more just that like I wanted to do things. I wanted to see certain things. I wanted to try certain things. And I'd invite people and people would say, yeah, I want to do that. But I didn't wait for them to also come with like, I'm going Labor Day. You want to come? Come. If not, I'm going. Like I just started doing that. Yeah. And so did that for years. And then so about 5 years later in 2015, I decided to start working remotely because I wanted to just have a little more freedom. And I started a blog called Sooner Not Later. And that was the idea behind that was to help people take action sooner, not later on their goals. And I did this crazy thing where I said I was going to do 52 bucket list items in 52 weeks. And so I just did all these crazy adventures that year. I went to the Tonight Show. I went skydiving. I went to Bali. I climbed a volcano. I don't know, all these weird things. And wow. I learned to surf. And throughout that process, there was so much travel. And people kept saying, you should start a travel blog. You should start a travel blog. And I really felt like the internet is so noisy. I don't want to add more to it. Like it just, anything that you need is already out there. And like, I know today that like, okay, people are attracted to certain voices and it's okay if you're saying something that's already out there, but the internet's very noisy and it's only gotten noisier in the last 6 years. But I just kind of sat on this idea and people kept pushing. And then I thought about all the ways that travel had helped me over that, I guess, 6 to 8 years of solo travel. And I thought back to that phrase that her bags were packed from 2007 in my journal. And I thought, maybe there's something to this. You know, there's Eat, Pray, Love, which is a woman's solo travel story. Right. There's Cheryl Stray's Wild, which is another solo travel story. And I thought, there is a theme here: women traveling, working through their baggage. And I thought my experience is not unique, but I don't hear anyone really talking about that. In all the noise of the internet, I'm not seeing that. And so I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it in a new and unique way. And so that's how her bags were packed. And the idea came along. I was terrified and did not launch it until 2017 because I was afraid I wouldn't do the idea justice. And that was eventually how I got There are so many aspects to solo travel that encourage growth and healing and like release. I joke with a lot of my friends that it's like completing therapy in the wild, right? Like you're like really just like out there in the real world doing your thing. Yeah. And so like you could get safety. Sorry, I'm totally jumping back. I knew there was something as far as safety. That is a whole nother topic that you can get into. But there's this great quote from this woman, Emily Hahn, who was a solo travel like throughout the early 1900s and on. And she wrote for the New Yorker. And she has this quote that she said, "The steward asked me if I was not afraid to travel alone. And I said, why is it not life?" And I'm just like, yeah, like that, it's life. Like we're all on this journey on our own, but we also have companions and, you know, dangerous things can happen anywhere. And you have, of course, there's so many ways to talk about safety. And I have a ton of resources on that. We could get into that a whole nother day or whatever. But as far as the healing aspect of it, here are some pieces of it. One, when you are traveling alone, you don't have anyone to distract you. And that's for the better and for the worse, right? So for the better, you get to do whatever the heck you want. You don't have to argue about, well, I want to go to this restaurant or I want to go to this museum. Like, you get to do what you want. You can be selfish. But it also means that there's no one there to distract you from the thoughts in your head and anything that you may be carrying along with you. You are going to have to kind of focus in on that. You can't always run from everything. I say a lot of people are like, oh, you're just traveling to get away from something. And, you know, I went to France and Italy for a month after my dad died. And I'm like, look, like, you can't run away from grief, but you can remove yourself from the place that maybe is overwhelming and triggering and just get yourself some space to kind of work through what's going on in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's very cathartic in that way. And when you're traveling solo, you're pushed out of your comfort zone and you have to figure out solutions to problems that arise. Like, you alone have to figure that out or find someone to help you. You don't have someone there to rely on or have them solve the situation for you. And the best part about that is you can then look back at it and go, I did that. Like, when you get through it, you end up with this list of really badass moments and you're like, I missed my train or I missed my stop and I ended up in blah, blah, blah. But I figured it out and now I have this amazing story. And I always joke, like, okay, if this doesn't kill us, it's going to be an amazing story to tell later.
Yeah.
And that's not to say people should get into sticky situations on purpose. I think there are people who do things like that sometimes.
Yes.
I'm not encouraging that, but it is, you know, you get through it, you figure it out. And with that, it's like, you know, they say that the magic happens when you get out of your comfort zone, right? Like, there's that image that's like, there's that little meme that goes around. It's like the circle. It's like comfort zone, magic over here. That's solo travel. You don't become fearless when you like, people are like, oh, you're so fearless. I'm like, no, I'm not fearless. But you stretch your courage muscles every time you step out of that comfort zone. And that is something that is applied to solo travel, but it's also something that can then be applied to every aspect of your life. So if you are stretching yourself out of your comfort zone when you're traveling, you can then come home and be more courageous in anything. So if you know, hey, I did this thing and it was really uncomfortable, but I survived it. Next time you want to take another risk, it's a little bit easier. There's that, I think Seth Godin wrote about I think it's called the amygdala, or it's like this part of the brain. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but they say it's like the caveman part of the brain that only understands like what it understands that like a risk is a risk to your life. It doesn't understand the difference between quitting your job and falling off a cliff. Like it only knows that it's dangerous. It doesn't know why. Yeah. And so that is the thing that's always trying to scare you, right? But I think the more we get comfortable with that feeling, that little voice that's whispering at us, the more courageous we get. And then you can, you know, maybe you're like, you know what, I want to quit my job and take a risk, like, because you're not fearless, but you're more courageous because you've taken those risks in other aspects of your life. So I do dig into all of this like deeper than like, I'm going to give you like bullet points, but on Her Bags Are Packed, there's way more detail. And then there's also a coaching program that digs into it. But I say take baby steps and ease yourself into it. So that's like, you know, maybe go somewhere local or just spend an afternoon alone, ease into it. Do your research ahead of time so that you have an idea of where you're staying, what there is to do, all of that. Have a plan. But once you have your plan, be flexible because things are going to change. You might discover something new, all of that. And don't let FOMO take over. So when you're traveling, it's easy to be like, I got to do this and I got to do that. And I want to see all of it. Like, I always joke, like when I want to go to Italy, I drop pins that are like North Italy, South Italy. I can do all this in the same trip. I'm like, I wouldn't go to Maine and Florida in the same trip. Why would I try? You know, like it just doesn't make sense. So You got to let the FOMO out or else you'll be so focused on trying to do everything that you don't even enjoy the moments that you're in. So let go of that.
I think the eating by ourselves thing can, sometimes intimidate people. How do you approach that?
I loved this question because I love being reminded of those pieces of it. Because sometimes after over a decade of traveling alone, like I forget about those little things that are the basic questions that people have. And someone just wrote to me about it earlier this week, so it was fresh in my mind. But in the same way that we talked about taking baby steps with the solo travel in general, I say take baby steps with eating by yourself. Maybe before you ever leave on a trip, practice going out to eat somewhere on your own. Someone I interviewed once, she said she was getting ready for a solo trip and she had never eaten alone by herself. And she was driving like 3 hours to go see her parents one day. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to stop and get fast food. I'm going to force myself to go sit down in a restaurant because when I go on my solo trip, I'm going to have to be okay with this. So she stopped at a Denny's and she's like, she's like, in my mind, all these truckers and people were like, who's this girl eating by herself? And I'm thinking they were probably all eating by themselves too. But so ease yourself into it. You can get something from a food truck or a street vendor and then just eat outside at a park or on a bench. Like that's easier for some people than going into a restaurant. And it's also fun because you get to like enjoy food trucks or street food, which sometimes is really amazing. So that's one way of kind of being creative. You can start with counter service. So if you are nervous about being at a restaurant, maybe you're worried the waiters are going to judge you or something, go to a restaurant where you order at the counter, but then you go sit at a table. So you're now inside a restaurant. So you're easing into it. I always say, put your phone away. Our phones are our security blankets, right? Like, let me just look like I'm busy so no one's judging me. But what happens is like, we all have seen the research that social media, it makes us lonelier than we already are. And so I say, put the phone away. One, you'll be less distracted. You'll be aware of your surroundings, which is important when you're alone. But also when you're looking around, paying attention, you're going to notice other people, things going on. You can have conversation. I have the best conversations when I'm out eating alone and maybe there's a woman a couple tables away and we start chit-chatting and next thing you know, they're like, oh, you got to try such and such, and making recommendations. So that's another one. And then another great thing to do is to sit at the bar, even if you're not drinking. Sit at the bar, get your food. There's usually other people up there who want to chit chat. The bar is a very social place. Bartenders are built-in best friends. Like they usually love having conversations and they're used to that and looking for someone fun to talk to and give advice and ask them for things to do where you are. Avoid overly formal places until you're really comfortable with it. Don't go to like the white tablecloth restaurant with the, all that aspect, because those are more romantic places. They're gonna make you feel awkward and lonely. So those are my tips for eating alone. Just work your way up to it.
As we're getting into the new year here and vaccines are starting to come out and there's some hope of maybe some normalcy. I'm not really sure what that would look like, but do you have a place you want to go to first when you finally can get back into travel?
I don't think this counts as the answer, but I'm really looking forward to going home. My grandparents have been vaccinated. They get their second one next week. And so I'm looking at in 3 weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back home to Jersey and Philly. I have this list of restaurants and things that I've just been keeping of foods I'm craving. And so it's not necessarily a big trip, but that is something I'm counting down the days to, of getting to really spend some good time with my grandparents and all the foods I want. If Pennsylvania will let me in, I can't remember. I don't know if they've changed their restrictions. They were requiring a test, but which I guess I could do, but I just am really freaked out. I've just been avoiding everything because I don't want to take the test. So I'd rather just stay home. But otherwise, some places I've been wanting to go. This is not an immediate thing, but I've always wanted to do a cruise to Alaska. Someone I used to work with, she was like, oh, you wouldn't like it because you don't like touristy things and all the ports are super touristy. And Then with 10 Best, we were just running our like 10 Best for cruises. And there's this adventure cruise line called Uncruise. And it's like a non-traditional, like they more like expeditions and stuff. So I have that on my list of things to research because I think that'd be really cool.
All right. So where can people find you?
herbagswerepacked.com.
Okay.
And then Instagram is at herbagswerepacked. Twitter is bags were packed because apparently her bags were packed is too long. And I've joined the clubhouse. I don't know what I'm doing, but that is also bags were packed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So someone come teach me what to do.
Well, thanks for
Thank you.
telling us about that. And yeah, I appreciate it.